What if a single midnight toll of a church bell was not a call to prayer, but the sound of vengeance? How can an enslaved woman silence her entire life, turn the symbol of her oppression into a weapon against her master? And why, more than a century later, do locals still whisper that the bell rings on its own each New Year's Eve? The year burns low and December holds its breath over in Arundel County, Maryland. Frost bristles on tobacco, rose gone gray with sleep. Barns exhale the sour memory of summer. Dawn begins the count, as always with the bell. Its bronze throat shakes the cold and strikes the ribs of the day. In the quarters, bodies rise before names are spoken. The overseer's step is a metronome no one dares to miss. Work collects the hours like a tax, and no receipt is given. Ruth is 22 and knows the bell like a second spine. It straightens her, bends her, times her heartbeat. She has learned the arithmetic of survival. Divide the pain, multiply the silence, subtract the witness. She moves with a patient economy, handling buckets, knives, bales, and broom with the care of someone who understands each object can be turned against her. Her back holds a map no crafter ever drew. Ridges, rivers, crossings, routes traced by leather and iron, by days that broke and did not heal. The Witmore house peers over fields like a white mask. Its windows are watchful gaps. Its porch a stage where verdicts fall in ordinary voices. Thomas Witmore prefers his cruelty tidy. A small correction before breakfast, a lesson after supper, as if justice were a chore that keeps a man respectable. He does not shout, he selects. He calls Ruth by the name someone else gave her, and says it gently as though the softness absolved the order that follows. Each Sunday the bell rings twice sweeter, and the church unlocks its righteous doors. Ruth polishes that bell when no one is listening, rubbing the lip with coarse cloth until her reflection shivers in the metal and vanishes. Scripture drifts from a nave like warm smoke, verses trimmed to fit the comfort of the pews. She collects the wax and crumbs after the amen, and the floor keeps her confidences. On the far wall, a hymn number hangs crooked, as if truth itself were slightly askew. At night, the quarters speak low. Names of vanished mothers move like weather. Old men recall roots under stars they can no longer see for cataracts. Children learn to swallow questions whole. Ruth keeps her voice to the inside of her skull, rehearsing sentences that cannot risk the air. Not forever. She mouths to the darkness. And the darkness, being honest, does not disagree. Winter sharpens memory. Snow comes fitful, thin as old linen, and prints of boots fuse into ruts that lead from the big house to the fields, from the fields to the storehouse, from the storehouse back to the bell. The pattern promises tomorrow will be the same shape as today. Yet under the crust of routine, something loosens, a small thread at the hem of fear, tugged by time. Ruth notices her hands do not tremble when Witmore passes close. She notices her breath remains level when the whip sings for someone else. She counts the breaths anyway. On Christmas, laughter spills from the house, rich and buttery. In the yard, a barrel smokes with meat she will not taste. A drop bucket becomes a spectacle, a stumble, an offense requiring theater. Ruth stands and endures as the cold nips tears from eyes she does not lower. The bell marks the hour as if keeping score, and the watchers drift back inside, full of stories to tell about discipline and providence. The snow swallows the noise until only the ringing remains. When night settles, the fields lie black and the sky salts itself with distant fires. Ruth sits on her pallet, palms open, as though waiting for a gift that will not come wrapped. The breath of the room is a slow animal. She listens to it and lays her heartbeat alongside two clocks, trying to agree. The bell sleeps in its wooden ribs, patient as a debt. If an ending must have a beginning, it will dress itself as something ordinary, a thought that refuses to leave, a silence that finally answers back. Between Christmas and the year's first breath, time thins to a wire. The plantation walks on tiptoe over its own silence, carrying hangover laughter like glass that might break. Work resumes its old arithmetic, but the numbers feel altered, as if a thumb presses a scale. Ruth moves where she must, steady as a kept secret, and the bell keeps the ledger with impartial clang. Thomas Witmore prefers ceremony to noise. He summons her to the yard the morning after a snow that wouldn't bother to stay. A dozen faces gather, collars up, eyes lit by curiosity more than anger. The offense is small enough to be useful. A bucket slip water kissing. The porch plank with an insolent stain. He speaks with the patience of a schoolmaster, polite, almost tender. When the lash arrives, it arrives like punctuation, meant to clarify, not to shout. Ruth stands through it without permission to fall. The body remembers how to become a wall. Bricks of breath, mortar of will. Sound drains from the moment, leaving only the counting she keeps inside. Numbers that are not numbers, but a bridge she can walk across. Somewhere beyond the white faces and the courteous cruelty, the bell marks the hour as though officiating a contract neither party signed. Later in the dim chapel, she rubs the bronze until it warms under her rag. The metal holds the ghost of her features, a trembling oval that cannot decide to exist. A verse lingers in the rafters about obedience, trimmed neat as a hedge. Ruth files the words away the way one files a blade. By friction, by patience, by the repetition that teaches an edge to remember its purpose. Night presses down. In the corridors, someone hums a tune with no melody, a rhythm old as walking. An elder lists the stars by their forgotten names, and then forgets them again. Ruth keeps her silence, but she does not keep her thoughts. They move in measured lines, mapping distances, from the door to the path, from the path to the church, from the church to the stair that climbs through timber ribs into a wooden throat. The days tip forward. Witmore's civility returns, a stain scrubbed almost clean. He likes to call her reliable. He likes that word as men like mirrors. He gives her small tasks at the edge of trust, keys to carry, linens to fetch, errands that pass her near the chapel when no one watches. The gesture clothes itself in benevolence. Inside it, something lazy sleeps. Ruth notices things without touching them. She notices the fray at the bell rope where many hands have pulled its voice into the sky. She notices a gap in the stair rail where a knot once lived. She notices her own fear behaving like an animal that has learned at last to sit. Evening she folds her hands to keep them from shaking and discovers they do not require restraint. When the year leans toward its final pane of glass, cold walks through the house uninvited. Witmore's friends return to their firesides. The overseer grows bored. The corridors hold a waiting that refuses to name itself. Ruth carries a candle across the yard and feels the wick's brave insistence against the wind. It draws a small circle of authority and asks her to step inside. On the last Sunday, the bell sings twice, gentle as a lie. After worship, she lingers, polishing, counting, breathing. The bronze keeps her reflection only long enough to establish that she exists, which is all a beginning requires. Outside, the fields lie rigid under frost. Inside, a thought wraps itself around her spine and tightens until standing straight feels like truth. The bell is only metal, the rope only fiber, the stair only wood, but a road is only dirt, and still it leads somewhere no one expects. The year turns, and the night of its dying hour hangs heavy over the county. New Year's Eve arrives draped in frost. The fields locked in silence, except for the restless hush of wind cutting through the tobacco stalks left to rot. The Witmore house glows with firelight and drunken raillery. Guests shuffle in with laughter sticky as syrup, their coats heavy, their voices louder than the walls can contain. Servants scurry between tables, bearing plates of meat and cast of spirits, while the enslaved wait at the edges. Shadows require to smile without smiling. The air is thick with wine, cigar smoke, and illusion of permanence. Ruth passes among them, her face a mask smooth as stone, her hands carrying trays that shake only when no one notices. The memory of her punishment lies beneath her skin like a coal that refuses to cool. Every word a mockery, every drop of laughter at her expense still burns, but she keeps her silence close. Around her neck hangs nothing but sweat. Around her wrists, no chains tonight, though habit has taught her body to feel them always. She does not speak, she listens. She counts the footsteps of her master as he circles the guests with a grin too polished to be real. The night crawls forward, the hours stacking like bricks in a wall. The bell rings once for midnight worship, but its voice is muffled by music and cheers. Witmore drinks deeply, boasting of crops, of discipline, of order. His laughter swells above the fiddles. Ruth observes him, The curve in his jaw when he sneers, the wobble in his gait as the wine gnaws at his balance. The guests do not see the weakness beneath his authority. But she does. She marks it carefully, the way one marks a door that might open under the right hand. When the hour of midnight draws near, the air sharpens, candles gutter, glasses clink, voices climb, a toast is raised to prosperity, to the land, to the years yet to come. Ruth stands behind her master, and for a breath too long she imagines a rope already drawn, his body already suspended, the bell declaring a new covenant. She blinks and the vision vanishes, but the taste remains. Metallic, certain, inevitable. At the stroke of 12, the crowd erupts. Shouts, embraces, drunken kisses, the sound of boots stomping against wood. The year is reborn in noise, but Ruth feels it reborn in silence. She withdraws to the shadows as the hall trembles with celebration. Witmore staggers, flushed and swaying, his cup spilling on the rug. He calls for more wine, more music, more proof of his dominion. None see the storm that has already chosen its course. Outside, frost hardens the ground into glass. Breath turns white in the air. The chapel stands a dark sentinel at the edge of the plantation, its tower reaching upward like a finger pointing at judgment. Within its ribs the bell waits, mute, its rope dangling in expectation. Ruth's steps press the frozen earth, her heart calm, her vision clear. She does not tremble now. The night bends to her pace, and time itself seems to pause, holding its breath for what must follow. Behind her, the Witmore house still rings with drunken joy, a world drunk on its own cruelty. Ahead of her, the stair climbs into darkness, a passage leading not just upward, but inward into the heart of something long delayed. The rope waits for hands that have known too much servitude, and those hands no longer refuse their purpose. The year has opened its first hour, and in that hour Ruth carries with her not submission, but the weight of decision, heavier than iron, sharper than justice, certain as a cold moon that watches without pity. The chapel door yields with a moan that belongs to it more than to conscience. Inside, the air tastes of cold iron and old prayers. The tower stair coils upward, a rib cage she must pass through one bone at a time. Ruth carries a rope in a loop against her forearm, its fibers rough as a history learned by touch. Each step answers with a whisper, and the whisper counts, and the counting becomes calm. She finds a bell waiting where darkness keeps its vigil. By habit, her fingers test the rope already knotted to the yoke, feeling the place where many hands have begged the metal to speak. She measures distances without measuring. The beam's height, the drop beneath the hatch, the path the body would take if asked by gravity to confess. Wind moves through a slit like a thin blade, cooling after work. She listens to it the way a patient listens to a clock in a doctor's room. Below, laughter unthreads itself into solitary noise. A door bangs. Boots hesitate on frozen earth. Thomas Witmore appears in the nave like a misremembered blessing, unsteady, pleased with himself, the rim of a cup cutting a bright half-moon in his hand. He calls a name as if summoning a dog, then thinks better of it, and smiles at the pews for understanding him so completely. The smile does not reach the stair. Ruth descends one flight, stopping where shadow swallows the last of the candle smell. Her voice arrives level, a quiet that makes room rather than takes it. He follows because he always has, emboldened by the liquor's deceit and a life that has never corrected him. The stair receives their weight, and what gives it small complaint, and the complaint is ignored, as complaints are. At the belfry he attempts a speech. Words tangle, formalities grasping at dignity that has slipped its leash. He reaches to steady himself, and meets her gaze for the first time, as if it were a wall where a door should be. The rope waits between them like a sentence unspoken. Ruth steps past him, not hurried, not slow, and sets the coil where it must be set. Over beam, through hand, around the truth of the neck that has pronounced so many verdicts. He says her name again, surprised to find it still hers. He begins to protest in the grammar of ownership, reflexive, unexamined, final. The code edits the sentence into breath. Ruth answers with silence, which is more complete than contradiction. Her palms remember the weight of buckets, of bales, of knives. They learn the new weight and do not tremble. She tightens until the rope speaks in its faint fibrous tongue. A small step backward, a measured shift, the patient labor of a life condensed into a single perfect task. Gravity, faithful servant, completes the order. The trap of the hatch receives what it is given. For an instant, the night forgets its manners. The bell awakens, one note, then another, rolling across fields and houses, across sleepers who will not comprehend the grammar of the sound. It is not a call to worship. It is not an alarm. It is a reckoning, rendered in bronze. Dogs begin their argument with the wind. Somewhere a window opens, and somewhere else a prayer breaks into pieces. Ruth stands with the rope slackening in her hands, breath arranged into slow parcels she can carry away. The air smells of frost and old metal. Her back burns with the memory of stripes grown quiet. There is no triumph in her face, only a steadiness that has finally discovered its use. The bell's tongue shivers once more, softer, as if closing a book. She lowers what must be lowered and leaves what must hang. The stair unwinds beneath her feet, granting passage without question. In the nave, benches remain attentive to an absence they cannot name. The door receives her and returns her to the white teeth of winter. Footprints advance toward the dark edge of the grounds, prints that know when to vanish. Behind her, the bell keeps time for those who awake and read the hour as omen or offense. Ahead, the road divides into choices that are not roads yet. Ruth moves within a quiet that belongs to her, not borrowed, not permitted. The night remakes itself around that fact and holds. Dawn arrives without ceremony. The frost clings to the fields like a shroud, and the first light finds the Witmore house strangely hushed. Inside, servants stir with unease, their ears still ringing from the clamor that broke the night. Some swear the bell tolled, though no hand was there to summon it. Others mutter that it rang for death, not worship, its bronze voice shaped into a dirge. Before questions inform, discovery spreads. Thomas Witmore hangs in the belfry, suspended between earth and heaven, his body turning with the slow rhythm of silence. The overseer shouts for order, but his words scatter like frightened birds. Guests whisper excuses as they prepare to leave, their faces pale, their carriages summoned before the sun is high. By midday, the story has already begun its migration, retold in half-truths and careful omissions. Some claim Witmore slipped in drunken raillery, caught in a rope like a fool. Others insist it was a hand of judgment, divine and unanswerable. No one speaks of Ruth, though her absence stains the air heavier than smoke. In the quarters, fear thickens. Men and women who saw nothing are accused of seeing too much. The lash threatens, but even fear cannot conjure a name that no one dares to pronounce. Ruth's pallet lies cold, her few belongings left untouched. Children whisper that she vanished into the woods, walking without sound, her shadow longer than her body. An elder says he dreamt a figure passing north, guided by stars veiled in winter's haze. But none can be certain, for certain he has abandoned the plantation with her. The bell tower stands empty, its beam scarred with a rope bore weight. Some avoid the chapel altogether, claiming that at night the air trembles there, as if memory itself refused to rest. On the following Sunday, the congregation prays louder than usual, but unease leaks into every syllable. When the time comes to ring the bell, no one volunteers. The rope hangs untouched, a reminder too raw, too near. Still, as dusk folds itself over the county, the bell groans once more, stirred by no visible hand. Its voice ripples outward, bending the silence, demanding attention from all who hear. Stories begin to grow like vines. A traveler passing through Maryland tells a woman seen boarding a wagon, her face hidden, her hand scarred. Another insists she joined the invisible road leading north, the one paved with secret signals and guarded by those who defy chains. Yet there are darker tales, too. Whispers that she was caught and silenced in some nameless hollow, her bones left for frost. Truth withdraws behind a curtain, and only rumor steps forward to answer. Years roll forward, but the memory does not release its hold. Children of the county grow up hearing that on New Year's Eve, the bell sometimes rings by itself, one slow toll that carries through the night air. The sound is said to tighten the heart, to still conversation, to remind the living of debts never paid. Some claim to see a figure moving through the trees, upright, steady, unhurried, her face lost in shadow, but her presence unmistakable. They call her by a name they never dared to speak when she lived under bondage. The Witmore estate dwindles, its fields grown stubborn, its name diminished. Yet the legend endures, where the soil remembers more than men wish it to. The bell, rusted and cracked, no longer speaks in daylight. But each winter, when the year prepares to change its skin, those who pass near the chapel pause, listening. For in that suspended hour between what was and what will be, Ruth is said to walk again. Not bound, not broken, but carrying the silence that once answered back. And in that silence, sharper than judgment, heavier than iron, lies a truth that no master can silence and no time can erase.